Hi guys, Ultimate Recaps here. In an alternate universe, there exists one of the most powerful weapon sets across the galaxy. No one knows its origin or even how it came to be. However, the Ten Rings is a formidable instrument that grants its wielder eternal life and the strength of a god. Wenwu, a power-obsessed, skilled martial artist, finds this weapon and uses it to conquer empires. Thanks to the Ten Rings, Wenwu is able to demolish entire armies single-handedly and leads the greatest military might the world has ever seen. He names his army the Ten Rings Organization, a group filled with spies, warriors, and assassins. For 1,000 years, Wenwu and his army move in the shadows, toppling governments and claiming riches. After the Ten Rings leader had conquered most of the earth, he learns of Talo, a village hidden in a magical forest. According to legends, Talo houses mythical creatures and boasts the fiercest warriors who practice a martial arts style from the gods. Power-hungry, Wenwu decides to find and conquer this village. His men suggest they scout the area first, but the arrogant leader insists on going immediately. That afternoon, Wenwu and his guards drive through the magical woods in search of Talo. Minutes into the journey, the forest begins moving and traps them in. Without warning, trees appear out of nowhere, blocking their path. The driver swerves out of the way, but unknowingly crashes down a cliff, while Wenwu jumps out of the car, barely escaping. A normal person would take the accident as a warning sign to back off. However, the Ten Rings leader had other plans. He continues the journey on foot and finds himself in a beautiful garden with Li, a masked guardian standing in the center. Wenwu commands her to let him into Talo. However, Li turns him away, demanding he leave the forest. Naturally, Wenwu doesn't take no for an answer and decides to fight her. He shoots his rings at Li, but the guardian gracefully dodges and removes her mask. Li turns out to be a gorgeous woman, and her beauty immediately enthralls Wenwu. However, the conqueror is determined to achieve his goal no matter what, and continues the fight. Wenwu opts for close-quarters combat and charges at Li, but the guardian is a more skillful fighter and gets the better of him. The conqueror tries shooting his rings at her again, but this time, Li uses her magical powers to redirect them, firing them back at him. Wenwu hits a tree and is about to land headfirst on the ground when Li controls the air, safely landing him in a nearby pond. Weeks after the fight, Wenwu and Li spend time together and fall in love. The Guardian seeks permission to live with her newfound love in Talo, but the elders deem Wenwu unworthy and decline her request. Eventually, Li is forced to leave the village, and Wenwu retires his rings. The couple settles for a peaceful life and goes on to have 2 kids together, a son, Shang-chi, and his sister, Xialing. From a young age, Li tells Shang-chi stories of Talo, revealing the village's people are empowered by magic from a dragon called the Great Protector. Li hands each of her kids an emerald necklace, explaining that it directs them home whenever they feel lost. Despite Wenwu abandoning his old life, his blood-filled past comes back to hunt him when a gang he'd wronged seeks revenge. They raid his home and find Li and her kids alone in the premises. Li sends Shang-chi and Xialing inside and single-handedly faces over a dozen men. When Wenwu arrives home, he finds corpses littered everywhere with Shang-chi kneeling next to his wife's unalived body. Overwhelmed with grief, Wenwu returns to his life of conquest and takes up the Ten Rings once more. The conqueror seeks revenge and hunts down the men responsible for the attack. However, he struggles to find their ringleader. Over the next few years, Wenwu goes from a caring father to a mean tyrant, forcing Shang-chi to undergo the most gruesome assassin training. From age 7, the young boy practices martial arts techniques and becomes a lethal fighter long before his teenage years. Meanwhile, Xialing is neglected since girls aren't allowed into the Ten Rings organization. However, she doesn't let that stop her and trains to be a skilled fighter on her own. Once Shang-chi clocks 14, Wenwu sends him on his first assassination assignment. The Ten Rings wielder reveals he found the ringleader responsible for unaliving Li and sends Shang-chi to take his life. Before he leaves, Shang-chi promises Xialing that he'll return in 3 days. However, after completing the assignment, the teenager is overwhelmed with regret and runs to America to escape his father's harsh training. Years later, Shang-Chi changes his identity and doesn't let anyone know about his family's background, including his best friend, Katie. After all this time, Shang-Chi still wears his mother's emerald necklace and works as a valet driver with Katie.
We've been friends for 10 years. Okay, you know I'm not an idiot.
One night, the duo has dinner with their mutual lawyer friend, Sue, and her fiancé. Sue believes Katie and Shang-Chi aren't living up to their potential and says they're destined to be more than valet drivers. The next day, Shang-Chi and his best friend ride the bus. During the ride, a random man stares at his pendant and asks him to hand it over. The trained fighter backs away, but two guys show up and grab him. Katie tries to stand up for Shang-Chi, but the man pushes her back. Livid, the master assassin shows his true colors and takes him out in one blow. The man's colleague steps in, but Shang-Chi easily overpowers despite a 3v1 disadvantage. Right then, Razor Fist, a giant man with a prosthetic laser sword arm, joins the fight. He swings at Shang-Chi, but the assassin skillfully dodges. Razor Fist's attacks end up damaging the bus in the process, and the brakes stop working. As a result, the bus driver slams the vehicle into a car and passes out. With no one manning the bus, Shang-Chi races to the front and takes charge of the steering wheel, but Razor Fist quickly goes after him. Eventually, Katie helps drive the bus, while Shang-Chi lures the giant to the tail cabin and continues the fight. Razor Fist gains the upper hand and is about to cut his opponent up. However, before he deals the finishing blow, the giant reveals he was sent by Wenwu to attack not just him, but also his sister. Luckily, Shang-Chi manages to free himself and kicks the one-armed giant back, while jumping into the next wagon. On his command, Katie makes a hard turn, knocking the tail cabin off and Razor Fist with it. Eventually, Katie manages to stop the bus, and Shang-Chi realizes Razor Fist stole his necklace during the fight. Katie has no idea what just happened and questions Shang-Chi about it. After years of keeping his family history a secret, the runaway assassin finally comes clean and tells his best friend all about his troubled past.
But a guy with a freaking machete for an arm just chopped our bus in half, Sean! Who the hell are you?
He worries that the Ten Rings organization might be after his sister and decides to warn her about their impending attack. However, this poses a huge problem, as Shang-Chi hasn't seen or spoken to Xialing since he left home. Luckily, she sent him a postcard a few months back, and the concerned brother finds her address on it. Together, Shang-Chi and Katie head to China in search of Xialing and end up in an underground fight club. They watch the center stage and see Wong, a talented sorcerer, battle a ginormous beast. Using his magic teleportation powers, Wong manages to defeat the creature, and the stage is cleared for the next match. Shang-Chi meets the club's organizer, and the man convinces the assassin to fight in exchange for Xialing's location. When Shang-Chi enters the ring, he discovers his opponent is none other than Xialing. Shang-Chi believes he's about to have an emotional family reunion, but Xialing has other plans. The estranged sister charges at her brother and lands several hits while Shang-Chi holds back. Ultimately, she takes him out with a kick to the face, winning the match. After the fight, Shang-Chi warns Xialing that the Ten Rings organization plans to steal her necklace. During their conversation, Xialing reveals that she owns the fighting ring, and it's clear that she still holds a grudge against her brother for abandoning her. Minutes later, the club's alarm system goes off, signaling the Ten Rings squad's arrival. Xialing and her men escape through a secret exit, while Shang-Chi and Katie are forced to fend for themselves. Shang-Chi breaks a window and suggests they escape via bamboo sticks by the side of the building. Right as they leave, the Ten Rings ninjas find them, and Shang-Chi fights them off to buy his friend some time. However, the warriors get to Katie despite Shang-Chi's best efforts, and push her off while she holds onto a bamboo stick, screaming for help. Shang-Chi runs and grabs her just in time, but a ninja electrocutes the assassin, forcing him to let her go. Katie falls, but luckily, Xialing saves her and returns to help her brother. As soon as they take out the minions, a bomb shatters a nearby window, sending them flying. Within seconds, the head ninja of the Ten Rings appears, snatches Xialing's necklace, and makes a run for it. He tries to escape via a helicopter, but Shang-Chi stops him. The duo gets into a fight, and it's instantly obvious that the head ninja is no small opponent. A heated battle ensues, but Shang-Chi gains the advantage and pins him to the ground. The assassin moves to deal the finishing blow, but Wenwu shows up and stops him. The Ten Rings leader reveals he sent his men after Shang-Chi as a test, and is impressed that his son defeated every one of them. Father and son have a brief reunion, and shortly after, they return home alongside Xialing and Katie. Upon their arrival, they're given a warm welcome, and Wenwu shares why he was after their necklaces. It turns out that after his kids escaped from home, the Conqueror started researching Ta Lo extensively. One day, during his studies, Wenwu heard his deceased wife's voice asking him for help. According to the Conqueror, Li is allegedly trapped behind a gate in Ta Lo by her people, and desperately needs someone to save her. Naturally, Shang-Chi and Xialing have trouble believing their unalived mother is communicating from the dead and think their dad is losing it. However, Wenwu is hell-bent on his fantasy and lets Shang-Chi and Xialing in on his plans.
There's a gate deep in the mountains. Your mother is waiting for us there.
The Conqueror uses their pendants to activate a dragon statue, and this opens a magical water map, depicting a layout of Ta Lo. The village is apparently guarded by an ever-changing forest maze, making it nearly impossible to infiltrate. However, a direct path to the village opens once a year at a specific time. Thanks to the pendants, Wenwu discovers that the path will appear in 3 days and plans to storm Ta Lo and free his wife. When Shang-Chi and Xialing question what he'd do if the people of Ta Lo refuse him, the Conqueror confesses he plans to burn the village to the ground. Brother and sister are against his plan and try to stop him, but Wenwu has them thrown into prison, alongside Katie. In jail, the trio meets Trevor, an actor, and Morris, his magical, faceless pet. The magical creature reveals it came from Ta Lo, and was picked up by Wenwu during one of his expeditions to the surrounding magical forest. Thanks to its knowledge of the terrain, Morris knows how to navigate the forest maze, and the group decides to break out and warn Ta Lo of Wenwu's impending attack. Xialing breaks through the prison walls, and the group escapes via a tunnel system under the compound. They steal a car from the garage and try to make their way through an exit, but Wenwu's guards block them off. Left with no alternative, they drive toward the other exit, but discover they need an authorized fingerprint to open it. Right then, 4 guards on bikes attack them from each side. Xialing and Shang-Chi easily take care of them, with the assassin pulling one into their car. After knocking the guard out, they use his fingerprint to open the garage door and narrowly escape, shutting the door after them. The next morning, the group heads to Ta Lo's forest maze. Katie drives the vehicle through the woods, and at first, everything goes seamlessly. However, things quickly switch up when the terrain begins to change, out of nowhere. The trees start moving erratically, and Katie struggles to navigate the maze. However, they maneuver through the trees and speed past the woods, thanks to Morris's guidance. Eventually, they end up in a garden and drive through a waterfall, finally arriving at Ta Lo through a portal. The mythical village is surreal, and unlike anything they'd ever seen. The area is filled with the prettiest trees and houses the most unique magical creatures, including 9-tailed foxes, burning phoenixes, and 8-foot-tall beasts. Upon arrival, they meet an army of guards, led by Guangbo, the village general. After introducing themselves as Li's kids, Shang-Chi and Xialing try to approach them, but the guards turn them back and prepare for an attack. Luckily, Nan, Li's sister, shows up just in time and stops the guards. She introduces herself as the siblings' aunt and welcomes her niece and nephew to the village. Shang-Chi warns the villagers of Wenwu's impending invasion, and Nan fills them in on Ta Lo's history. Apparently, the Ta Lo people have existed for over 40 centuries, protecting the world from a dark entity with the power to destroy the world. Years ago, the Dweller in Darkness, a soul-eating monster, attacked the village with its army of flying demons. The Dweller in Darkness grew stronger with each soul it devoured and tried to enter the human world. However, the Ta Lo leaders sent their strongest warriors to stop the evil army. At first, the village warriors were no match for the soul-eating monster. However, the tides turned when the Great Protector, a powerful dragon, joined the fight. The Ta Lo warriors managed to push back the Dweller in Darkness and his forces and locked them behind the Dark Gate. Since then, the monster has lured multiple warriors over the years to try to break them free, impersonating the voices of their loved ones and promising them their greatest desires. Hence, the voice Wenwu has been hearing is in fact not Li's, but that of the Dweller in Darkness. After the history lesson, the villagers begin training in preparation for Wenwu's coming, and the visitors follow suit. Katie learns to shoot from Guangbo, Xiaoling polishes her skills, while Shang-Chi trains with his aunt. The night before Wenwu's invasion, Shang-Chi has a chat with Katie and reveals he plans to unalive his father. The following day, the Ta Lo warriors prepare for battle and arm themselves with dragon-scale outfits and weapons. Shang-Chi and Xiaoling wear armors left behind by their mum and join the villagers to face Wenwu. Moments later, the Conqueror arrives with his men and demands that they destroy the Dark Gate. However, Nan refuses and tells him that an evil entity is manipulating him. A delusional Wenwu doesn't believe her and orders his men to attack. Both sides charge at each other, and Wenwu walks through the battlefield towards the Dark Gate. Nan tries to stop him, but the Conqueror's head ninja interferes, and the duo begins to duel. Shang-Chi sees his father walking away and tries to chase after him, but Razor Fist stops the assassin. Luckily, Xiaoling arrives and keeps the one-handed giant busy, while Shang-Chi catches up with his dad. The assassin finds Wenwu in a nearby temple and attacks him with a staff, but the Ten Rings wielder counters and kicks his son to the ground. Angry at his son's defiance, the Conqueror reopens old wounds and blames Shang-Chi for his mother's death. He berates him for standing watching as a child, doing nothing while Li was unalived. Wenwu tries to walk away, but Shang-Chi is determined to stop him and attacks from behind. However, the Conqueror easily stops his strike and counters. Wenwu shoots the rings at Shang-Chi, but the assassin deflects his attacks and charges at his father. Shang-Chi lands a few hits and calls out Wenwu for being a terrible father. He says Li would be disappointed in him, and this really pushes Wenwu's buttons. Livid, the Conqueror punches his son with the rings and sends him flying into a nearby river. Right then, Wenwu hears Li's voice from the mountains and leaps to the Dark Gate. He punches and weakens the barrier, allowing the Dweller in Darkness's army to slip through. Meanwhile, back at the battlefield, the Ta Lo people gain the upper hand over Wenwu's men. However, chaos quickly ensues when the Dweller in Darkness's troops raid the village. A flying demon grabs Wenwu's head ninja, extracts his soul, and feeds it to the Dweller in Darkness, who uses it to recover its strength. Realizing the danger they're in, the Ten Rings organization decides to halt their battle and join forces with the Ta Lo warriors to fight the demons. Meanwhile, Shang-Chi sinks into the bottom of the river, and the Great Protector emerges from the riverbed. Shang-Chi rides it and confronts his father again before he can fully destroy the gate. Wasting no time, father and son resume their duel. But this time, Shang-Chi is even more determined to do whatever it takes to stop him. Wenwu fires 5 rings at his son, but the assassin uses his mother's techniques to redirect them, gaining control of the rings. With 5 rings each, Wenwu and Shang-Chi are evenly matched, and the battle intensifies. Without warning, the Conqueror launches Shang-Chi into the air and fires his rings at him, blasting his son to the ground. When Wenwu returns to his feet, he discovers his attack was a huge mistake, as the assassin has now gained control of all 10 rings. Shang-Chi tries to unalive his dad and charges for a super attack. However, he has a change of heart at the last minute and tosses the rings to the ground. Shang-Chi pleads with his dad to drop his mission, and Wenwu briefly considers it. However, it is already too late as the Dweller in Darkness breaks out of the Dark Gate. It tries to attack Shang-Chi, but Wenwu pushes his son out of the way, sacrificing himself while the creature eats his soul. Before it consumes him, Wenwu passes the rings onto his son, and Shang-Chi helplessly watches as his dad is unalived. Moments later, the Dweller in Darkness tries to attack Shang-Chi, but Xiaoling rides in with the Great Protector, stopping its attack. While the dragon keeps the evil master busy, Shang-Chi uses the rings to create a landslide that seals the gate, preventing more demon troops from escaping their prison. Shortly after, the assassin joins his sister on the Great Protector, and the dragon controls the nearby river, creating a tsunami that imprisons the Dweller in Darkness. At first, the evil creature is too weak to break out. However, its minions begin feeding it human souls, increasing its strength. An empowered dweller in darkness breaks out of its water prison and grabs the Great Protector, devouring its life force. This turns out to be a very dangerous position, as consuming the dragon's soul would make the evil creature truly unstoppable. Seeing this, Guangbo, alongside Katie, tries to stop the dweller in darkness, but the Ta Lo general is unalived by one of the flying demons. Wasting no time, Katie shoots an arrow at the creature's neck, buying the Great Protector some time to escape. The dragon slithers away, splashing water at the dweller in darkness, while Xiaoling and Shang-chi hold on for dear life. Eventually, Xiaoling and the Great Protector join forces to hold the creature down, while Shang-chi fires the 10 rings at it, destroying the dweller in darkness from the inside out. After the battle, the Ta Lo people light candles and pay their final respects to those they lost in battle. Days later, they all return to their respective lives, and Shang-chi and Katie head back to America. They have another dinner date with Sue and her fiancé. The duo fills them in on what happened in the past week, but Sue doesn't buy their story and believes they're trolling her. Moments later, Wong, the sorcerer from the Fight Club, arrives through a portal and asks Shang-chi and Katie to follow him, while Sue and her fiancé are left dumbfounded. The duo heads into the portal and meets with Wong and 2 other superhero scientists, where they discuss the ring's origin. In the closing scene, we see Xiaoling has taken over the 10 Rings organization, making it an inclusive army where men and women are allowed to train and are finally seen as equals. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this and want to see more, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you never miss a future video. And until next time guys, take care.